Alright, today we got a 6.7 Powerstroke, came in with a spun crank gear. I got the engine removed, let me show you what we found. So here I've got the upper oil pan removed. Look at this oil pump pickup tube screen. It is full of these aluminum shavings. They're not magnetic. Right above the oil pump pickup tube, you see the flange where the lower oil pan bolts on. It's got this cavity here, and for whatever reason it is full of magnetic metal shavings. Look at that. How do you explain that? Magnetic shavings there? Non-magnetic shavings here. So with the upper oil pan removed, here you can see the crank gear has slid towards the timing cover. Notice how the rear of the crank gear is no longer flush with the rear of the cam gear. That is not good. With the timing cover removed, you can see a shiny spot on this crank gear where it was contacting the oil pump cover. Notice again just how far this crank gear has slid forward on the crankshaft. So here we're looking at the oil pump housing that's bolted to the back of the timing cover. If you look closely, you can see right here where that crank gear was like a lathe and was just taking aluminum right off the back of this oil pump housing. When we found this area of contact here between the gear and the oil pump housing, we knew where the non-magnetic shavings here came from, but that did not explain all the magnetic shavings present here. So we started digging a little further. Let me show you what we found. This main bearing is completely trashed. So actually, there's a pretty good chance that a lot of that non-magnetic material that we found on the oil pump pickup tube screen actually came from this failed main bearing as well, as plain bearings and engines are made up of several layers, some of which are not magnetic. So here you can see they have two main types of engine bearings. They have bimetal bearings and trimetal bearings. Both of them have non-magnetic properties. This one obviously has aluminum. This one has copper, nickel. The nickel's magnetic, but the overlay is usually made out of babbitt. As you see here, this is a tri-metal bearing, and the babbitt is made out of tin and lead and several other properties, but babbitt material is not magnetic, so that could explain what we thought was the aluminum on that oil pump pickup tube screen. The good news is, the crankshaft appears to be perfectly fine. The other good news is how the main bearings get their lubrication. Here you can see this engine has two main oil galleys running front to rear. The right oil galley has one oil passageway for each main bearing. When the main bearing is lubricated with oil, the oil then travels to the rod bearing, and that's it. That's the last component in line to get lubrication on this oil circuit. That means any contamination from this failed main bearing can only damage the rod bearing and no other components. So if I pull this crankshaft out and all the journals are good on all the mains and the rods, we can throw a set of bearings in this thing and be good to go. And yes, we are fully aware that all the metal coming from that failed main bearing is just going to drop into the oil pan and can be sucked back up into the lubrication system, causing other engine damage. However, in this case, all the particles of metal are too big to pass through the screen and the pickup tube. Here you can see we pulled the oil pump apart to make sure that no metal got to the pump. If this thing would have been pumping metal, the surface would have been pitted really bad. In this case, the surface is smooth, so the oil pump is still good, and that's also evidence that no large chunks of metal made its way to the pump. We also cut open the oil filter to make sure there was no metal inside. And the pleats are completely clean, so we're confident that there should not be any damage done to other components inside the engine from that main bearing failure. This engine here only has 110,000 miles. The bearing failure was probably caused by a lack of oil changes. Just look at how dark this oil is. Looks like a Cummins. It also doesn't help that we found no oil on the dipstick when the truck came in. And yes, while a complete engine overhaul is the best solution here, it's also the most expensive solution. We feel very confident that if we pull the crankshaft out and all the journals look good, that by slapping a new set of bearings in here and getting the customer to change the oil more often, this engine will live a long, happy life. I would also like to note that we did take a close look at all the cam lobes and roller lifters, and they all appeared to be in great condition. Here we're going to be pulling the crankshaft out. According to the service manual, you have to pull the pistons and rods, but that requires complete engine disassembly. So what we've done is very carefully taken off each connecting rod and pushed the pistons towards top dead center. And we have just enough room. We're going to be very careful. We're going to use the engine hoist to come straight out with it, and we'll use the engine hoist to go straight back down with it during assembly as well. So here we got the crankshaft out. It's still in really good condition. This journal here is where the main bearing failed, nice and smooth. The rod journals also look really good. Here you can see what the main bearing should look like. It has this orange colored coating on there. Uh-oh, that one's not good. The rod bearings You can see a little bit of trash in these, which is to be expected due to that main bearing failure, but for the most part, they're in really good condition. Even the 3 crankshaft thrust bearings are in good condition. Here we're cleaning out the crankshaft oil passageways to make sure there's no metal stuck inside. Before we drop this crankshaft back in here, I'm using a bore scope on this oil passageway that feeds oil to this number 2 main bearing. I want to make sure there's no restrictions in this oil passageway. Here you can see it's a clean hole all the way to the oil galley. Alright, we got all the new bearings in place. Notice how there's no tangs on these bearings. When you place them into the block and the connecting rods, you need to make sure they're nice and centered. We're going to be using some Lucas heavy duty oil stabilizer as our assembly lube on these bearings. This stuff has the consistency of honey. It works great for doing stuff like this. Got the crank all cleaned up and ready to go back in. Shee! Gotta give it to them Powerstroke engineers. They know how to make a crank. It's amazing this crank can take abuse like that and come out looking brand new. So check this out. I got the crank back in. Number 1 pistons at top dead center. I got a laser shining between the center of the crankshaft and the center of the injection pump. Here's a timing mark on the crank gear. This little dot here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 full teeth off. So here's the gear after we removed and reinstalled it. You can see it's now in time, and it's also flush with the face of the cam gear. Before I TIG weld this gear to the crankshaft, I always make a couple little marks on the crank. You can barely see them, but that's going to indicate the start and end of my weld. It's impossible to see those when you're welding, of course, so I got some TIG wire here, and it's under a little bit of a spring preload, and I'll just place this right at that mark. Now when I'm welding, I know when to stop when I hit the wire. Also make sure to space these welds evenly. There's 4 welds, but they're spaced evenly around the crankshaft. Before I start welding, I always sharpen my tungsten to a really fine point. This is going to direct the arc right where I want it, because we want a really small weld. If we have a big weld, it can interfere with the timing cover and the oil pump. So we want a small weld here, and I use this Milwaukee M12 tungsten sharpener. It's got an attachment made by Sharpie. This thing works ace, giving you really fine points and very consistent on the angle. When you're welding, it's extremely important to ground directly to the crankshaft. Don't ground to the engine block or main cap, because all the current going through this tungsten is going to then go through the bearings and can potentially mess up the bearings. Alright, now it's showtime. Notice how I have a headlamp epoxied to the front of my welding helmet. This makes it really easy to see those little marks I put on the crank to know exactly where to start the weld. Now the name of the game here is to get in and get out quickly. Don't dilly-dally around. The more time you spend welding, the more heat gets transferred into the crank and the gear. When you get done welding, you want to see little to no discoloration in both the crank and the gear. Now look, is it going to win a welding competition? No, but I can assure you, that gear's not going anywhere. So going back in with the engine, we're going to be using my modified 3-ton engine hoist to have a full YouTube video of how I built this thing. Works great because it's got this hand crank winch on here. So when I get the engine input into position, I can go straight down with the engine. If you lower the boom, it's going to push the engine outward as it goes down. It's just basic geometry here. The other cool thing about the cable is I can easily rotate the engine 360 degrees. There's not much tension versus all the other engine hoists. It's just got a little chain here and the hook, and it's always wanting to go back to its position. It'll stay at like a 45 degree. This, I can rotate it very easily. And I have these little hooks here I can grab onto to grab the front of the motor to keep it in position as I'm going down with it. This makes it really simple to put this engine back in. Well, it's about time to drop the cab back on this thing. But wait, there's more. This thing has a fast fuel system. And fast includes a resistor that's supposed to be bolted to an aluminum heatsink that's then bolted to the side of the frame rail. You see? Ooh. Ah. Whoever put this fast fuel system on here did not do that. Look at how hot that resistor's got, and it has melted into the top of the fuel tank. But don't worry, we called up fast and they sent us a brand new resistor and mounting bracket. Notice how we used M6 bolts to attach the bracket to the frame. You won't find us using self-tappers in this shop. That's because we're men of sophistication and not uncultured swine. We also installed this Black Market Performance Cat fuel filter kit. This gets rid of the factory plastic fuel filter that used to be located right about here. Those fuel filters have been known to crack and leak, which can set the whole truck on fire. When the truck came in, the crankcase ventilation system was just vented to atmosphere. The customer got tired of smelling all the crankcase vapor and seeing all the smoke coming out of the crankcase ventilation hose, so we installed this SPE Motorsports recirculating CCV. This recirculating CCV operates like a factory oil separator in that it sends all the crankcase vapors right back to the intake of the turbocharger. This truck has an aftermarket intake, so we had to weld on this stainless tubing to attach that hose. But unlike the factory oil separator, this oil separator can be taken apart and cleaned. All you have to do is pull that one bolt, this lid comes off and exposes a washable stainless steel mesh filter. You can keep that clean and you'll never have to replace this again. Now check this out. This is the air filter that was on the truck when it came in. If you ask me, this filter's way too small for a 6.7 Powerstroke. So we found him this much larger S&B filter to take its place. Now the main reason this air filter was so collapsed is because the air intake pipe wasn't supported at all. It was just hanging onto the turbocharger for dear life. But now, it's not going anywhere. We bent him up this 1/4 inch thick steel brace. It holds that intake very securely. And last but not least, we replaced the problematic CP4 injection pump with an S&S DCR pump. So regardless if I've had the crank removed or not, anytime I have the timing cover, upper oil pan, and oil cooler removed on a 6.7, I always want to prime the oil system as much as possible before starting the engine. Here I'm going to start by filling up the oil filter all the way. Next I will be forcing over a gallon of oil into the engine with this pressurized oil tank. The oil is fed through this hose into the threaded port for the oil pressure sensor. Now one very important tip if you're going to use this tool to prime your oil system, don't let it run dry. Leave a little bit of oil on the bottom. If you let it run dry, it's going to start pumping air through this hose, and that air is going to force all the oil that you just put into the oil galleys. It's going to force all the oil out and replace it with air, totally defeating the purpose of using this tool. All right, y'all finally ready to hear this thing? Go ahead, hit it, boss man.
Yeah.